Is it censorship? It's not. I don't necessarily think it's censorship from the companies. I think the companies, have a responsibility to many stakeholders. And with all due respect to Kimmel and Colbert, they're not the top stakeholder here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's their shareholders, but it's the collective of employees they have and ecosystem that they have. And as much as I hate to admit it, you could make the case that kind of like divisive, sentiment that alienates half of America is probably not welcome. Now, what is a bit, you could make the argument about censorship is, yes, Donald Trump weaponizing the FCC, weaponizing institutions of government to say, hey, if you say things that I don't like, we're going to come after you. And if you wanted to merge with some company, we'll block it. There is beyond an ethical and moral question, and that is where you're sliding into fascism. And my article was, is America entering fascism? The main comment was entering, like, wake up. We've been in this state now for a few years.
Do you think that Trump's response is a reaction to also him being deplatformed, from like kicked off of social media and stuff like that? It's kind of happened to him. Like, this isn't unprecedented that somebody is being silenced like that,
It's a great point you make, Rob. I think some of it is, hey, if this happened to me, why can't it happen to others? But it is above and beyond that, right? I mean, I think, again, Trump, he is not this kind of leader that goes and plans and talks to people. He is a fly off the seat of your pants kind of guy. So I don't think there was that much planning or plotting. I think you've seen, Skydance and Paramount merged. And, oh, look, we're going to sacrifice CBS as part of that empire. It's like, oh, look, we're going to sacrifice Colbert to to Trump so he doesn't kind of block this merger. You look at many other times, he's suing New York Times now for $15 billion. So I don't necessarily think, even though Trump does always project this sense of like injustice is done to me, the Russia hoax, and some of it he's right? Like if in the end it was nothing involving him with regards to collusion with Russia, I would also be pretty peed off. And it's crazy. Donald Trump, president of America, there was like 2 assassination attempts, one that came close, forgotten. But I do think this is more just what we all anticipated. Somebody who's thin-skinned, very, very narcissistic, and does have these personal vendettas. He'll still go off on people, even you would think, he's won re-election. But I think when you're in your second term, and I don't think, by the way, that America is doomed or anything like that, because there are still these safeguards. So presuming he leaves in 2028, I guess, what the long-term impact on America is going to be is TBD. But there was an article in The Guardian that said America has 400 days to save democracy, because if at the interim elections there's not a sense of balance, it's clear that the Republicans are not going to get in his way the way some of them did in his first term. He does pretty much have like free reign to do what he wants. So that is a bit alarming. Again, I've always said it, in the West, y'all take your liberties and freedom for granted. I think this is what you are seeing in the West. Like last week in the UK, there was like the March for England or whatever. What is leading a lot of these countries now to wake up and push back? It's because clearly what they thought was the safe haven for their society, none of that should be taken for granted. The dangers and the specter facing France and UK, very different to the ones that the U.S. is facing. Well, I would say the U.S. is even more complicated, frankly, given how powerful it is on the global military and economic sense.
Yeah, even people like Tucker Carlson have been outspoken against, the basically preserving the right of free speech and being critical of this move to I guess suspend Kimmel, even though they don't align, in terms of like political views and stuff like that. So I think most people can agree that free speech is important, and that, nobody should be deplatformed, I don't think, for things that they say. But there probably are other reasons too. Like Trump has said, I know this is kind of sounds like a lame excuse, but it's like, oh yeah, the ratings were down. They were just waiting for an excuse to like get rid of this guy. Is there anything to that too? Because we know that also the late night shows are very, they only cater to the left leaning audience, right? They do, and they have alienated the other side of the country.
No, spot on and great point. Look, this is not going to be like politically correct, and a lot of people. I'm not talking about WatchMojo. We have like 50 employees. I'm not talking about our little, hub away from reality. For the last 10 years, corporations, even if they were open to the DEI, BLM, social justice kind of movements, they probably felt like it had gone too far. When you see a bunch of Microsoft employees storming into some VP's office and saying, we don't like, for example, that some Microsoft product is used by Israel to do this and that, that VP is like, wants to kill those people. That VP is like, I got my own goals. Do you think I control whether Microsoft products are used by Israel or not? As an example. But all of a sudden, the same way that academia had become this kind of like nonsense zone where you're doing everything but studying, and corporations had also become this thing that was like, keep it at home. It's like if we had a creative meeting to discuss any topic and it went sideways, after a while, I would also be like, guys, like, this isn't productive. Like, I respect everybody's point of view, but it's got to stop. So what am I getting at? Yes, corporations and academic institutions, I assure you, they are going to use this to clean house. Not saying that those individuals are problematic, but if they see somebody, an individual who's always militant, always complaining about everything, sense of indignation, yes, they're going to use this opportunity the way you had McCarthyism in the 20th century. They're going to use this opportunity to clean house. So you know what? We see the writing on the wall. The late night shows, nobody watches them the way they used to. And in fact, they themselves, we've talked about this, program for social now. They come up with these little segments that are like perfect for the YouTube platform. Yeah. So the concept of paying a host $50 million and then having 200 people run around to support that one person, that one narcissist's worldview, it's not really sustainable, because those media companies have to cut so many costs, less viewership, less ad dollars, less cable subscriptions. So, you know what I mean? Like corporations a decade ago, and I don't blame Disney then or now, they have, they got stakeholders in their ear. A decade ago, Disney went too far where, Snow White was not like what she looked like 50 years ago. And, you look at the memes with Netflix where all of a sudden, Cleopatra is an Asian woman, just like purely not being provocative, but almost trolling, people's like, am I on crazy pills? That same company now felt that, what Kimmel said crossed the line. Now, Kimmel didn't say anything. I think there were some articles where it was just, we don't really care what he said. It wasn't that bad. He didn't cross any line. But if Trump is going to kind of like just use this as an excuse to hurt us and other things we're doing, well, they're going to use the opportunity to clean house. I personally, I don't mind. Like I listen to a lot of people online. I'll talk to people, even if they're wrong, because it's informative. And when my team, let's say the idealistic, inexperienced, green, naive people would say things that I was like, this makes no sense. Like this person doesn't even have any experience. They don't even have any education. They don't even know what they're talking about. But I still engage in this and that. But I will admit, if I had trouble employees that were constantly whining and complaining, well, between the specter of AI, between the specter of automation, between like if you're Starbucks, and somebody orders a drink and you think this is the right canvas to make a political message on their name, you should get your ass fired. You should never be hired again. If you then go out there and you say, I criticize Starbucks, that's your right. No retaliation there. But if you're like, this is bullshit, Charlie Kirk was this, and it's totally fair, well then, guess what? Somebody's going to come and put a bullet in, Shelley's, the employee, your colleague Shelley's neck. Starbucks doesn't want that. So Starbucks has to come hard. Now, if people go, this is fascism. No, it's not really fascism. It's Starbucks has to protect its employees, right? It has to create us. So I think this again shows just the lack of common sense that, I always say the youth is right. They were right about civil rights movement. The youth were right about LGBT rights. The youth were right about everything. Like they get some things wrong, but the youth generally, I'm 47. There's in some ways I'm a kid at heart, but There are times when I go, well, Ash, this is you just getting older, maybe a bit more successful. Like, don't lose your principle of like injustice is usually identified by younger, less established people. But that went way too far. And so I think what you're seeing is, again, lack of education, helicopter parenting, social media, kids being in a pandemic, no socialization. Also like, hey, man, if I said some nonsense, my dad would tell me, slap me across the face, and my mom would hurl her sandal at me. Yeah, that kind of fear. I'm not talking about child abuse, but that kind of fear is lacking now. So when you're in a class and some kid goes, I'm a cat, and the teacher has to go along with it, it's problematic. But what made it worse was that the teacher believed that you were a cat.